global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. Well, it's the case that has touched the hearts of people right across the world. I can't think in my lifetime of a young child facing death fairly shortly that has raised such passions and tensions on both sides of the argument, has involved the Pope, the President of the United States of America. It is truly remarkable. And in many ways, we thought that the Charlie Gard case was over yesterday, in that the parents withdrew the application to take him to the USA for this new experimental revolutionary treatment. But they're still in court today. They're still there battling away today. Now, the doctors caring for Charlie at Great Ormond Street say they want to fulfil the last desire of his parents, Chris Gard and Connie Yates, and that is they want little Charlie to go back home, to die at home, as opposed to dying in hospital. But we're told by the hospital there are practical difficulties in providing the intensive care that Charlie needs outside a hospital. And the judge said the chances of him being able to spend his final days at home are small. So these poor parents are still fighting and still battling. The objections are practical ones. It's to do with the transportation of a child from the front door, up the path, through the front door with a ventilator, and the feeling that there needs to be somebody trained to intensive care standards there to monitor all of that. Hang on. They've raised £1.3 million. And that money was raised to help Charlie go abroad, and it would be a perfectly valid use of that money to provide expertise in terms of nursing care and facilities in terms of a ventilator. I still cannot see why the establishment is fighting so hard against these two people who I've met, and they're people of sound mind, and they're good people, and their pain and their agony just keeps on being prolonged. But the really big debate in all of this, and there are so many questions that have been raised by this case, and I don't think anyone can even pretend for a moment to have all of the answers. But the real question in all of this, don't forget, they wanted Charlie to go abroad at the end of last year to have this new experimental treatment administered by Dr. Hirano, who, as you know, then came to the UK this week and said that the latest scan showed that, sadly, because of further deterioration, there was now no point in going through that treatment, which led to Chris Gard giving a very, very strong, passionate speech on the steps of the High Court yesterday, saying that he felt too much time had been wasted by the hospital that had led to the child's deterioration. So there are very strong passions being raised on both sides of this. But should parents have the right to explore having experimental new treatments by taking their child abroad? That is what I want to ask you. Should parents have the right to do this, or is it actually the role of the doctors and the state to make these decisions? It is a big fundamental point. It is bigger than Charlie Gard. It is bigger than Charlie Gard's parents. It's about all of us and the kind of country in which we live. And to get involved in this debate, strong emotive debate, please call me on 0345 6060 973, text me at 84850, tweet me on @LBC, not forgetting the hashtag Farage and LBC, and of course you can watch the show live by going to LBC's Facebook page now. And I'm going to go to Matilda in Redbridge as my first caller of the evening. Matilda, should people be allowed, parents particularly, be allowed to, provided they're of sound mind, and I think that proviso is very important, should they be allowed to take children abroad for new treatment?
Hello, Mr. Farage. It's a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for taking my call.
Good evening.
Right, Mr. Farage, I listened to your one of your phone-ins 2 weeks ago, and you had a friend of the family on the show.
I did.
And at that point, I'm sorry, I'm so emotional about this topic. At that point,
Matilda, millions and millions of people are, and I must admit, I listened to the statement last night given by Chris Gard, and I tell you what, pretty difficult for anybody not to feel just a little bit of a tear welling up, because it is very powerful.
Whether you're a parent or not, I think anybody can empathise with this whole situation.
Yeah.
What I will say is that I felt that from the point when the case was returned to the hospital to the court by Great Ormond Street Hospital, I know this may sound controversial, but I believe that there wasn't ever going to be treatment abroad. And
why do you say that?
Because I've been through the court system myself. I know how it works very much. So as soon as they got Dr. Hirano, is it professor or doctor? I always forget.
I think it's both, actually, but go on, yeah.
Okay. Fine. As soon as he got him down from the States, I asked myself, why did he have to come all that way when scan results could have been sent to him, especially when the request to have this therapy was long-standing? Okay, I believe that the system engaged in a time-wasting exercise and allowed that little boy to deteriorate unnecessarily because of this main issue, self-preservation. Once we cannot treat this child here, and if we cast our minds back to Ashia King, what happened there? He was also diagnosed as having a terminal disease.
Yeah, for those that don't know this case that are listening in, Aisha King was a little boy who was operated on in Southampton Hospital and had a brain cancer removed. He was 3 or 4 years old at the time, and his parents had heard that there was a proton therapy available in Prague, and they wanted to take the boy to have that therapy. The medical establishment said, oh, no, you can't do anything like that. We know what's best. And then, Matilda, they flew off to Europe, and the parents were arrested. Because the British...
It was a whole debacle. And remember the doctors here said that the machine was like a ticking time bomb, in that if it stopped working, the little boy was going to die, which what we found out later was absolute nonsense.
Well, what is nonsense, Matilda? What was nonsense and what's fascinating is that in the end, he did receive the proton treatment. He's now at school. The last scan showed that he was clear, and proton therapy will be available, folks, on the National Health Service in 2018, which, Matilda, proves one thing to me, which is why I'm for this proposition tonight. I think that parents ultimately should make these decisions and should be able to take their children abroad for new experimental treatments, because it seems to me, Matilda, that medical science moves at different speeds in different parts of the world.
It does, and what I find horrendous is that I myself, as an adult, if I was diagnosed with something quite aggressive, I could take myself off as an adult to have these therapies elsewhere. A lot of the people in the establishment do take themselves off to these places to have checkups and everything else. We know, we love the NHS, but we know at times that some therapies are not available because of the cost. These parents have their money to go. And I have no idea why we have ever seen this day happen. But like I said to you 2 weeks ago, given my own experiences, I knew that this was going to be the sad result of this whole case. A lot of lawyers have made a lot of money in the last few weeks, but poor Charlie Gard, his poor parents have gone through hell. And when you look at it, it's all for nothing. But what I pray for is that this will highlight the issues regarding the family court, because it's not only about issues like this. There are other issues where things are done in secret that we wouldn't actually have known this was happen.
This is the point. The state's got too much power, and parents of sound mind have got too little power in terms of making this decision. That's my view, Matilda. Thank you. And any of you that disagree with that strongly, 03456060973. Nigel, in my opinion, it is a doctor's job to inform and share their knowledge. It is the parents' right to make informed decisions about their child, says Josie. When parents are told there's no hope and it's terminal, there's nothing to lose by letting parents explore treatment abroad. They should be allowed to try, but only if there's no chance of a recovery here, says Brett. What does Michael in High Wycombe make of this dilemma, I suppose? Because on the one hand, Michael, you know, we all admire so much of what Great Ormond Street have done over the decades, but on the other, it's a bit difficult not to feel a bit for the parents, isn't it?
Oh, good evening, Nigel. Well, it is indeed. I mean, the reason I rang in is I just wanted to make the point that I think this demonstrates the lack of faith that people have in our public institutions these days, because you think of Great Ormond Street, I mean, they're probably the finest people in the world that work there, from the nurses and the doctors and everyone else there. Yet there's so little faith in our public institutions now that even they're being lambasted for, you know, what is apparently something that's controversial, maybe something folks maybe doesn't. You know, my own personal gut feeling is that they probably called it right, and that there wasn't much they could actually do for this poor little lad. But nonetheless, people's faith in that decision is at such a low ebb, I think, and that's what...
No, I think that's a very valid point. And, medically, it may well be that Connie and Chris, the parents, were looking to try and find the end of the rainbow. But you know what? So what? So what?
Yeah.
They now, and this is what, Michael, the thing that makes me angry, those parents now, until their dying day, will say to themselves, what if we'd been able, 7 or 8 months ago, to take our child to America for this experimental treatment? And that, to me, I think is the absolutely cruelest part of this whole case.
I think it is, and I think, but all of our institutions have been exposed as being inadequate. In the last 10 years, everything is wrong with more or less all of them, and this is just the latest sort of...
So we've lost our faith in government, we've lost our faith in the church, we've lost our faith in virtually everything, Michael. That's really what you're saying, isn't it?
It is, and if I can make a second point as well, very quickly.
Do.
This is also, to a large extent, about money as well, because if Charlie Garne's parents are suddenly allowed to take their child elsewhere, who pays for it? Now, I know in this particular case they've raised the funds for it and everything else, but in the majority of these cases where it is controversial, where the parents do want to do something, and all parents would want to do something in the same situation, they should all have the right, but they probably don't all necessarily have the same funds that
No, that's true, but in this case there was never going to be any strain on the public purse, Michael. Michael, thank you for your call. On the point of money, in a moment, I'm going to tell you where I think we've been misspending a lot of public money, a lot of NHS money. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and it's 7:15.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins is embroiled in a free speech row with an American radio station who've dropped him for making hurtful comments about Islam. Mikdad Versi is Assistant General Secretary of the Muslim Council of Britain.
I'm not sure this is an example of censorship.
Oliver Cam is columnist and leader writer for The Times.
It's a clear case of censorship. I'm glad it's been picked up, and I'm glad you're covering it.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast, every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
To celebrate our new sponsorship of Red Bull Racing, Esso is giving you a chance to feel part of the team. Fill up at any Esso station before the end of August, and you could find yourself trackside with the Red Bull Racing team at a selected race this season. Esso and Red Bull Racing, the new fast.
Terms apply. See esso.co.uk for details.
It's how London buys its cars. Car Giant.
Summer, the best time of the year, and the best time to buy from Car Giant. We've up to 10,000 quality used cars in stock, all at our best ever prices, with new stock arriving every day. Car Giant. Giant choice, giant savings. Book a test drive now and enjoy summer in your next car.
It's how London buys its cars. Car Giant.
Score the biggest deal of the Premier League and save an unbeatable £900 versus Sky over 18 months with Britain's lowest price Sky Sports Bundle from TalkTalk. For just $28.45 a month, get award-winning TV, all 8 Sky Sports channels and unlimited broadband including line rental. But hurry, the big summer save ends 17th of August. Search TalkTalk TV now. TalkTalk. For everyone. Based on slower broadband speeds than BT and Virgin. Competitor contracts for 12 months. Sky has more channels. Contract and conditions apply.
Stub out your last cigarette and celebrate with a holiday in the Caribbean. London South Bank University is looking for smokers to take part in an exciting new research project in the capital. You'll be paid to take part, and along with the chance to become a non-smoker, there's a Caribbean holiday and more to be won. So hurry. Search online for LSBU Stop Smoking Study. That's LSBU Stop Smoking Study. Over 18s only, T's and C's apply.
We've been thinking about Tom.
The cat.
And how, whilst he's remembered to buy cat litter, he's forgotten his bank card. But instead of worrying about how he's going to pay for it, he's simply wondering if a dog might have been a better choice of pet. That's because at NatWest, we've already thought about the left bank card at home scenario. It's why we created Get Cash, so you can withdraw money from our cash machines with just our mobile app. NatWest, we are what we do.
Take out up to £130 a day as long as it's within your withdrawal limit. App available to customers with online banking and a UK number.
Concur does what might seem impossible for your business. It makes employees happy and finance happy. How? Well, employees love automated expense claims and invoices they can submit and approve from anywhere. And finance loves that they have full visibility into employee spend. Plus, Concur integrates with leading finance systems. Concur makes the process better for everyone. Concur. Expense, travel, invoice. Learn more at concur.co.uk.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
From the very moment when Chris and Connie, Charlie Gard's parents, were told there was nothing more medically that could be done for their son in this country, they began their quest. And they found this Dr. Hirano in America who had this new form of oral medicine that was being used for people with mitochondrial conditions. There was absolutely no guarantee that any of this would work, but there was at least a prospect that it might. And from the moment that the parents said, well, thank you very much, Great Ormond Street, we're taking our kid to the USA to try this new therapy, they were told no, and it went legal. It's been through all court levels in this country. It's been right up to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, and it's still going on right now as we speak, a big legal battle. Now, on top of that, of course, Great Ormond Street Hospital have their own press and PR department. And when I turned up outside the hospital the other day, if you remember, and I interviewed Chris and Connie on Nick Ferrari's breakfast show, I was approached by a very well-known former Fleet Street political journalist who now works for a firm called Portland Communications. They are a big PR company. To take on their services is normally a very expensive thing. Now, it may well be they've offered their services to Great Ormond Street for free. It may well be. But the question I want to ask is just how much public money, just how much NHS money has been spent over the course of the last 7 months in legal fees and PR and press. What have they spent? How many hundreds of thousands of pounds have they spent on this case just to prevent these parents from taking their young kid to the United States of America? And is that how our money should be spent in the National Health Service? I don't think so. And if anybody from Great Ormond Street wants to ring up and tell me what the number is, it's 0345 60 60 973. That, to me, is just wrong. Connie and Chris, on the other hand, as you know, raised a huge amount of money as part of their quest. It's all well and good lawyers making lots of money, but it's not well and good for NHS money to be spent in this way. It's almost like a closed shop, isn't it? You know, we've decided in this country we can't do any more, therefore there's nobody else in the world that can, and I just do not buy that, and I think it was absolutely the right of these parents to go to the USA. They've been prevented from doing it. I think the state has too much power and parents have too few rights. If you disagree with that, please let me know. Curtis in Oxford is my next caller. Curtis, good evening.
Good evening. I just thought I'd call up with a point of view as someone who works for a biologics company.
Yeah, do.
Soon to be the first FDA-approved biologics drug for leukemia in the world.
Wow.
And 6 years ago, there was a little girl, I forgot her name now, but she was treated, the first one to be treated with the drug, and she was on her deathbed. And if she wasn't allowed to be given that drug, well, she's 12 years old now, she's been in remission the whole time, and if people and parents aren't allowed to go into these situations and take these revolutionary drugs, then it's going to halt the progression of the pharmaceutical industry.
So, Curtis, medical science changes and new technologies come along that are better than the ones that were previously there, yeah?
Yeah, and at the time, I mean, it was like far out, but now, like 6 years, like we're talking now, there's companies all around the world looking at lentivector viral technology, like DNA therapy. It's the future, and so, you know, who knows? The little kid that was going to get treated. You know, I was a bit nervous putting the name, but
Curtis,
it could be the future.
Curtis, is it that the medical establishment in this country didn't want to let Charlie Gard go somewhere else for fear that people might say, oh gosh, it's better abroad? Is there something of that in this, or should we view this in a different light, that actually globally we all work together to make great advances?
Yeah, I think we should all definitely work together. It'll speed things up. And it's definitely up to the parents, I think. There's a lot of arrogance sometimes that people, well, not arrogance, but people automatically assume that someone in a white coat knows everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a scientist, and I just know that a scientist will never tell you what they don't know. There's some fascinating things, if you actually look into it, about the stuff they don't tell. Well, who's going to publish a paper about stuff they don't know?
Well, exactly.
It's fascinating, actually, yeah.
Curtis, your phone call is very, very valuable indeed, and I thank you very much indeed. First-time caller there, Curtis, a scientist who says, hey, if you don't try new stuff, you never know what can happen. And backing up Curtis, Cindy says to me on text, all treatments were once experimental. I can't find doctors, nurses in the country who would care for Charlie in his last days at home. Cindy, I find the whole thing totally, utterly extraordinary. Governments and courts should only interfere in parents' choices when it puts the child at risk, such as denying them blood transfusion. Parents should be free to carry out any safe treatment to help their child. Yeah, I mean, look, this is the point we're making. If parents are of sound mind and have the best interests of their child at heart, they should be able to make these decisions. And Jan on Facebook says, of course parents should seek further treatment abroad if all else fails here. If it doesn't help their own child, it paves the way forward for future kids' survival. Backing up what Curtis says, that drugs science is constantly changing and constantly moving, and it's only by trying new stuff that you actually find out what works. Carol is calling me from Radlett in Hertfordshire. Good evening, Carol.
Good evening, Nigel. This subject is very, very close to my heart, and first of all, I want to say my heart goes out to the parents of Charlie.
Absolutely.
And I can only imagine what they've been going through in trying to save their son's life. And I have personal experience of coming up against the medical profession and their lack of knowledge in certain areas. My son, age 33, 10 years ago, was suffering with chronic intractable nerve pain, whereby as a city lawyer he could not work, he couldn't sit down, he was in agony. We went from nerve consultants to neurosurgeons, the lot, in London. Supposedly he had an MRI under the very, very best neurologist, and they looked at the area he had pain in. They saw nothing. My son, because he didn't want to give up, even though he felt there was no future for him because he wasn't working, he wasn't socialising, he was stuck indoors, he went online, thank God for the internet. He self-diagnosed what his problem was, as a result of which we ultimately ended up in Florida seeing a nerve consultant who did an MRI which showed up a problem that hadn't shown up in this country, having had MRIs here, and he ended up being operated on. Thank God, and I thank God, he had a successful outcome to the operation. There were entrapped nerves in his buttock, and on which the consultant operated, and it was a successful operation. He's now working, married, with a family.
So that's a happy story, Carol. It's a happy story because he went abroad for experimental treatment.
Well, it wasn't so experimental because this guy had been doing this type of operation for some time, but they were years ahead of what the doctors were doing here. And I think that the medical profession, I think they find it very threatening when they are drawing a blank and there's a suggestion that someone else might have an answer.
Yeah, I think you're right, Carol. I think you're right, and I was, discussing this with the previous caller. It's almost as if we're saying, look, you can't go abroad because supposing you get better abroad and you haven't got better here, and that reflects badly on us. And actually, Carol, all of us who are friendly nations across the West and who knows developing countries too should be saying, hey, do you know what? This is a common project to advance the cause of mankind and relieve suffering. But I think you're right. I think that is the mentality. And Carol, thank you very much for your call. And a very happy outcome. Well, Carol there, her son living proof that going abroad for different treatments can be a good thing. And, whether you go abroad or even second opinions. Do you know, I was under for 9 weeks a series of doctors all of whom said I was okay as long as I kept taking these tablets. And it really got so bad, I lost faith so much, I went for a second opinion. Do you know, within 24 hours, I was having a cancer removed that had been missed completely by a series of doctors. Doctors don't always get things right, so I feel pretty strongly about this subject. Paul from New Romney in Kent, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel.
Good evening. What's your view?
Well, it occurs to me, I'm no medical expert, but it occurs to me that if you're a medical researcher, a starting point is always to know everything there is to be known about a condition and everything that's currently being in use, every treatment that's currently in use.
Mm-hmm.
So however far or however little they've taken it past that, they know more. They must know more than the medical establishment is currently using in treatment. So surely their opinions should carry a lot of weight. I'm so surprised the hospital haven't, or didn't more quickly bow to the opinion of another researcher that he thought he might be able to help.
Well, they actually, Paul, yesterday went quite a lot further than that, and they put out a statement, Great Ormond Street, and I'll read it to you. They said, in the months ahead, all at GOSH will be giving thought as to what they can learn from this bruising court case that might enrich the care it provides to its most vulnerable parents and families. It is hoped that those who, like Professor Harano, have provided opinions that have so sustained Charlie's parents, their hopes, and thus this protracted litigation with its many consequences, will also find much to reflect upon. Rather than listening to him, Paul, they're slagging him off.
I know, well, I find it quite frankly terrible.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to say anything unkind about that.
No, well, none of us want to, Paul. None of us want to slag off GOSH or the medical services in this country. What we would ask them to be is a bit more open-minded and to allow parents to exercise choice. Paul from New Romney is frustrated by this, as many of us, I think, are. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively here on LBC. It's 7:30 and time for the news with Maura Alderson.
The High Court will decide tomorrow whether Charlie Gard should leave Great Ormond Street Hospital in order to die at home. The terminally ill baby's mother has been back in court today after giving up the legal fight yesterday to take him abroad for treatment. The chairman of the inquiry into the Grenfell Tower fire is meeting local residents this evening to discuss the scope of his investigation. Sir Martin Morbick has already faced calls to step down and has previously been told his team lacks diversity. Prince Philip's final official royal engagement before he retires from public life will take place a week tomorrow. The Duke of Edinburgh will attend a parade at Buckingham Palace. LBC weather, any showers will ease to give a dry start to the night, but it will become wet and windy in the west in the early hours of the morning. An overnight low of 16 degrees.
LBC Travel, good evening, I'm Andy Lake. Well, starting off in Surrey, the M25 is queuing anti-clockwise approaching junction 8 for Reigate because a car caught fire. Now back open fully. In South London, it's slow on the South Circular in Catford, approaching the temporary traffic lights at Stansted Road, where the roadworks continue. And in Central London, it's slow northbound coming over Tower Bridge after a couple of breakdowns not far from Tower Hill Station. Into Berkshire, the M4 is slow eastbound between junction 13 for the A34 at Cheveley and 12 for the A4 at Theale after a car caught fire earlier. And then in Gloucestershire, the M50 is still looking slow westbound between junction 2 for Ledbury and 3 for Newent. It's down to just one lane there to recover a collision. For more real-time traffic updates, go to lbc.co.uk.
This is LBC.
I was unaware of the progression opportunities within teaching, but my career has progressed in ways that I never thought possible.
You can climb the ladder at a young age as well.
I'm already the head of my own department.
It's not just once you're a teacher and that's it.
Even now that I'm head teacher, it doesn't mean that there's nowhere else for me to go.
100% that was the best decision that I made.
I chose to teach.
A career in teaching offers you the opportunity to progress fast. Apply now to train in September. Search Apply to Teach.
When you hear a PPI commercial like this, you think, I wonder if I ever did have PPI. And maybe I should claim with the deadline being announced. And then you think, oh, but I'm not sure where my paperwork is. So you end up doing nothing. Well, here's the easiest thing in the world to do. Just text the word EASY to 60777 and the claims guys will conduct a free search to discover if you ever had PPI. And then you can decide to pursue the claim yourself or get the claims guys to do it for you. Text EASY to 60777 now.
The claims guys.
An amazing kitchen, an amazing bathroom, an amazing hallway,
At Amazing Tiles, our range of porcelain, ceramic and bespoke tiles can make any home amazing. Right now, buy 5 metres or more of plain tiles and get a third off the retail price. Visit our showroom and warehouse at Park Royal Road, London, or call 0208 83 84 900. Make your home amazing at amazingtiles.com.
You can earn more with a degree.
And you can get a degree in just 2 years with a course at GSM London.
Degrees are awarded by Plymouth University. And if you don't have a formal qualification, you can start on our foundation year.
Places are available for September at our Greenford and Greenwich campuses.
Enroll now. Text GSM to 66777.
Or visit gsmlondon.ac.uk.
GSM London.
Have bold dreams.
Have you discovered the award-winning new Citroen C3? With integrated connected cam Citroen, 36 bi-tone colour combinations, Apple CarPlay, and 3 years free servicing. Why not discover it for yourself in showrooms now, or search new C3. Citroen. Features available on selected models. 3-year offer ends after 36 months or if 35,000 miles are exceeded, whichever occurs soonest. Terms and conditions apply at participating dealers only.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
Well, it's the Charlie Gard case. It's touched hearts all over the world, and I think, we had a couple of phone calls from people later on today saying how emotional they felt hearing the news reports and hearing Chris Gard's statement last night, and you know what? I was one of those. I thought it was very, very powerful, very strong. I felt desperately sorry for them, and, I'm asking you that should parents have the right to explore experimental new treatments abroad? So far, most of you think absolutely it should be, the doctors advise, but the parents should be able to go abroad. And we had Curtis on, a scientist, who made the point that unless you try new experimental treatments, you don't actually go forward and make advances in medicine. But I'm very keen to get anybody with a contrary view. Anyone that thinks, no, actually, it's the medical establishment that should make these decisions and should be deciding, as they are today, that Charlie has to die in hospital and the facilities can't be provided for him to die at home. But there's one other story today that fascinates me, and it takes us back to that Tuesday evening when I was here, and the Labour Party had just launched their manifesto. Corbyn was there, and I said the energy and the excitement that he'd shown compared with Theresa May the previous day, leading to many of you texting and tweeting that suddenly I'd become a lefty fees, not just for those going to university now or in the future, but for all of those people who'd built up student debt. In fact, shortly after that launch, when he was interviewed by the New Musical Express, I guess by that time all roads were leading to Glastonbury, and he said, yes, Labour will deal with the issue of student debt. Others were even clearer. The Shadow Justice Minister, Imran Hussain, said during the election, every existing student will have all their debt wiped off. That's fantastic news, guys, isn't it? And the implication was that £100 billion would be found to wipe off the entire student debt that existed in this country. And boy, didn't people believe it. 59% of 18 to 24-year-olds thought their debt was going to be wiped off or massively, massively reduced. And, of course, we saw a lot of young people voting in that general election, more young people than have voted in a general election for a very, very long time. But all of a sudden, it seems to be a little bit different, because today Angela Rayner, who is the Shadow Education Secretary, said there are no plans to write off existing loans and that her party had never promised to do so. And John McDonnell, the Shadow Chancellor, said, oh, no, it wasn't a promise, it's just an ambition of ours. I wonder, is the shine now beginning to come off that great Corbynista vision? People, youngsters, in nightclubs, chanting on the dance floor. I haven't been there myself, of course, but I was told by a nightclub owner that at midnight they were chanting on the dance floor, Corbyn, Corbyn, this mania that had swept the young, that he was going to reduce all existing student debt. And suddenly we're told, well, actually, folks, sorry, but that wasn't really true. So I wonder whether perhaps we might see Mr Corbyn's fortunes with the young decline. Could they decline as quickly as they increased? Well, do you know what? It was the issue of student debt that did for Nick Clegg and did for the Liberal Democrats, so it's not impossible. One to watch, I would suggest, and I'd be very keen to see the next opinion poll research amongst 18 to 24-year-olds after today to see how much faith they've got in Corbyn getting rid of their debt. But back to the issue, back to the protracted, expensive legal battles that have taken place now over the course of many, many months. David in Ipswich is my next caller. Good evening, David.
Hello, Nigel.
So, what have you got to say, David? You're on LBC. The floor is yours.
Well, just a slightly different perspective, maybe. I mean, obviously, this is a very emotive, sort of case. And being a parent myself of a 9-month-old, I'm sure I would sort of try and move heaven and earth to do what I can. But all the talk seems to be about the parents. And actually, really, this is not about the parents, is it? This is about, the little boy.
Yes.
Is that the doctor's, the doctor's job is not actually to think about the parents, it's to think about the child. And perhaps is their perspective that this treatment taken abroad would potentially be, damaging, causing pain, distress.
Well, that's a very, very important point, David. And actually, Pamela on Facebook very much backs up the question that you're asking. And she says the only thing that hasn't been established, I believe, is whether little Charlie is in pain or not. Without being able to vocalise or even thrash about as he can't move his limbs, does anyone know for sure if he is suffering? So, David, you're not on your own. There are others thinking this way. All I can say, and don't forget that, I have been, over the course of the last couple of weeks, very much in touch with the spokesman and friends close to the family. What I am told, David, is that morphine, a very tiny dose of morphine, was first administered to Charlie, and that this started in April or May. So it began, after the first big series of court cases. Prior to that, David, my understanding from talking to all of those involved in this case, prior to that, there was no morphine administered. And I don't, from what I'm told, believe that putting him on an aeroplane with the right ventilator and everything else would have caused
the issue.
any issue. Now, David, I'm giving that to you. It's kind of third hand, because I've asked these questions as you've done. I've asked them of the friends of the family. That's what I'm told. And I do understand, David, that if that if the medical establishment felt that doing this was putting the child through huge unnecessary suffering, then I would perhaps be a little bit more sympathetic with their position. But they haven't really said that, David, have they?
Is there a reason why the treatment couldn't have been carried out? I mean, if the professor came here, is there a reason why he could not have just come here 7 months ago and carried out the treatment
Yes,
here?
laws around what drugs are legal within the European Union, actually. I know we're leaving, but at the moment we're still... but thank you. No. I'm trying to make this a Brexit-free zone tonight, I really am. But no, the fact that those drugs are not at the moment on the recognised legal list in this country, and that, I think, was the reason why it couldn't be done here. But, there were offers from the American doctors to administer here, but legally it couldn't be done. So, David, I completely understand your question, but I've seen no evidence that suggests it would have led to undue suffering. And in those circumstances, David, do you think they should have been allowed to go to America?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, as a parent, I would like to be able to take the final decisions on how my child is treated. And, unless there was a very, very good reason, taking my emotion as a parent out of it and probably my need and my wants, there'd have to be a pretty good reason, I think, to not allow me to make that decision. No.
Well, David, all of us as parents of young kids would want to do everything we could, and that's totally understandable, but it needs to be realistic. And I don't know, I genuinely don't know whether if 7 months ago little Charlie had gone, it would have made a big difference or not. I've no idea, and you've no idea either. But given that, from all the knowledge I've got, that at that moment in time he wasn't under any pain-killing, treatment of any kind at all, I, for the life of me, cannot see why. And also, if little Charlie had gone, that bed would have been freed in Great Ormond Street for another young child out there that is suffering. I don't get it, David, but I thank you. Nigel, I don't agree or disagree with the actions of Gosh, but describing the expenditure as preventing the trip to America is possibly unfair, as all the facts are not in the public domain, says Kevin in Sundridge. Well, Kevin, I've been doing my best over the last fortnight to establish every fact I can, which is why I've spent endless hours on the telephone with all of those involved with the Charlie Gard campaign, doing my utmost to learn what I can. But I stand by my point that a very large amount of public money, of NHS money, has been spent through the legal system, and I suspect through PR, to prevent them going to America. I absolutely stand by my point. On Twitter I get, don't blame the doctors in Charlie's case, it's the institutionalised system that's obstructing the doctors. Well, yeah, it is the establishment. I'm blaming the establishment in this country who, with this and so many other things, seem to just put up the shutters and say there is no other alternative, and that makes me angry. Hannah in Enfield, what would you do if you were in Connie and Chris's position?
Oh, I'm absolutely heartbroken for them. The doctors are just... I've got a little boy with Down syndrome, and they just go by the textbooks. They're not interested in research. They're not interested in trying anything new. They're just in their own little bubble. They don't care about the child. They're just robots. And
that's pretty strong stuff, Hannah.
Oh, that's how they've made us feel over the. But my heart is broken for them. They could have tried, and if they would have just done something sooner, this little boy would have been in a different position now. And I think they should just let him go home now. Let him be with the parents.
Yeah.
Let him be at peace.
Yeah. Well, Hannah, you know, little Charlie might have got considerably better, and he might not have got considerably better. And none of us, I don't think any of us, are really qualified to comment on that. But it is about the rights of parents or the rights of the state. And I just think the emphasis has gone way too far in favour of the state, Hannah. I really do.
Yeah, I can't tell you. I feel so sorry for those parents. And at least the doctors could have tried. Could have said, OK, we'll take this into consideration, we'll do it. But they weren't interested. They were just interested in them funding. And, I can't tell you how terrible the NHS have been to us. But I have to say, the only good thing about Gosh is that they did a remarkable heart surgery on my little boy when he was a baby, and they were amazing.
Yeah, Hannah, that's good to hear, because, and I repeat the point, Hannah, and thank you for your call, and I'm sorry for the difficulties that you've been through. I've got 4 kids. I've never been through anything like that, thank goodness, I have to say. But Hannah, you know, the point is, we are not trying to wage war against Gosh or anybody that's doing their best in the British medical system. We're just asking them, perhaps, to be a bit more open-minded about parents taking their kids overseas at no cost to the public purse and trying experimental treatments. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's 7:45.
Coming up at 8 on LBC, Clive Bull.
There's been a big rise in the number of takeaways, despite council's best efforts to limit fast food outlets. Should more be done to halt the rise of the takeaway?
Clive Bull on LBC.
Are you confused about PPI? At PPI Hotline, we want to give you the facts. There is absolutely every reason to check you had PPI. Even if you think you never have, we can help you find out, as you could be owed thousands. And now there's a deadline. We just need the name of the bank you've had loans or credit cards with, and we'll check for free. So find out now if you're owed by texting WIN to 82222.
PPI Hotline. Text WIN to 82222.
At Volkswagen Commercial Vehicles, we understand how important it is to choose the right van for your business. So not only does the Volkswagen Transporter have city emergency braking as standard, meaning you're less likely to be involved in an accident, it also now comes with 2 free services and is available on contract hire for just £229 a month. That's right, you're in van heaven. Search Volkswagen Transporter to find out more. Volkswagen Commercial Vehicles, working with you. £1,374 initial rental and 20% VAT. Business users only until 1st of October 2017. T's and C's and exclusions apply. Volkswagen Commercial Vehicle Financial Services.
Does your computer feel slow or sluggish? Is your screen full of unwanted pop-ups? Your computer could be under attack from the inside. Today's viruses and malware are designed to get past your antivirus software and hide in your system. But there's a simple solution, the Fix Me Stick. Fix Me Stick is the future of computer virus removal. Plug it in and it takes the viruses, ransomware, spyware, trojans and other malware out. Pick up a Fix Me Stick today to keep your computer fast and clean. Available at Asda Supercenters and on Amazon.
For some, it's challenging the reigning champion to a game of cards.
Come on then.
For others, it's having a natter each week with a hairdresser. Or simply settling down with a good book in the afternoon. For whatever your elderly loved one enjoys doing, Bupa Care Homes for living. To find the right care home for your loved one, call 0800 115 6000. That's 0800 115 6000.
High quality, affordable kitchens designed in your own home. That's Room Sense.
That's Room Sense.
Book your free Room Sense home design visit and we'll measure up, show you samples, create a stunning kitchen design and give you a quote all before we leave.
Quality at a price you can afford. That's Room Sense.
Book today at roomsense.co.uk.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
Well, it's Charlie Gard, and there are strong, strong emotions and opinions on both sides. Some of you saying, well, you know, what if this would have meant more suffering for the child? I've not been given any evidence that going on an aeroplane would have led to that, and I'm baffled, still baffled, as to why we've been through this protracted, expensive court case to prevent him going abroad for experimental treatment. I don't get it, but maybe Charles in Wandsworth can give me the answer. Charles, good evening.
Hello, good evening, Nigel.
Hi there. So, what should have happened here, Charles?
Well, I'm not really commenting on the case in particular. Obviously, feel awful for the parents and the whole situation.
Yes.
I want to make a more general point that I'm uncomfortable with the tone of the coverage and and a lot of the previous callers, because if we encourage people to look at experimental procedures in the States, how would that work? It's just unfeasible if we send all the patients from the NHS who are not getting better as quickly or as comprehensive as they would like. If we were sending them all off to the States,
well, we wouldn't
it's just irresponsible.
We wouldn't be sending them. We collectively, as a country or a National Health Service, wouldn't be sending anyone anywhere. I'm not making that argument, Charles. What I'm arguing is that there should be parental choice in this, and that provided the parents are of sound mind and it's not going to cause the child unnecessary suffering, that it should be their right if they wish to go and do this. Charles, that's the argument.
I don't think it's practical, and if you're creating the suggestion that should be their right,
yes.
These conversations are going to be happening, with tens of thousands of people who are seriously sick in the NHS at any one day. And I'm afraid a lot of those, a decent number of those situations end badly. And there will always somewhere be someone doing an experimental procedure on every medical condition known to man.
Of course.
And you're encouraging them to go seeking that. And the internet gives very poor quality information. It doesn't take into account the particular situations of that patient. And you'll be raising false hopes if everyone immediately imagines you can jump on a plane. Whoever pays, I'm not making a point about paying for it, and obviously
no.
The parents, and it's not how medicines are developed. They're developed in a very controlled way, and actually it's harder to develop these medicines in the States than in the UK or the EU, in fact, because the FDA is far, far stricter.
But isn't it fair, Charles, to say, you work in this, I don't, but isn't it fair to say that medical science moves at different speeds on different subjects at different paces all over the world?
Until the medicines are approved, either in the States or in the EU or in Japan, until they're approved, it is not ethically responsible to use them. And that's that. If we lose that principle, chaos would ensue.
Well, look, Charles, I don't think we're talking about vast numbers of people. But we're talking here about a very, very... And I know you wanted to talk in generalities, and I understand the points that you've made very strongly. But I'm going to bring you back to this case, if I can, for a minute, you know, with your knowledge of medicine and science and all the rest of it. You know, my question, Charles, to you, should the parents... And I've met them, they're of sound mind, they're good people. Should they not have had the right to at least go and give Charlie one last chance?
Bluntly, I think no.
OK. Well, Charles, I understand your opinion, and you work within the industry, and I'm not going to go to war with you over this, and I thank you for your call. Well, Charles thinks the answer is no. He's actually sceptical about whether America can move medicine on more quickly than we can. None of us are qualified to comment, but this is not a debate about medicine. It really isn't. It's a debate, actually, about parental choice versus the powers of a state. Francis says, Nigel, the parents raised money to have their child undergo experimental treatment. They should have been allowed to go to the US. If Charlie was going to die, did it matter if the treatment failed? Well, frankly, Francis, no, I agree with that. And at least the parents would have felt themselves, we did everything humanly possible on Earth. Toby in Windsor, good evening.
Evening. I was just wondering if you could clear something up for me, sorry.
Yes.
So you were saying about you think that we should be able to take children from here to America and America to here in the EU, so on and so forth. But then when you were running for Prime Minister, you said that you made a big point about people with HIV and AIDS coming to England. So I just wondered, when's your cut-off line for people to receive medical care?
Well, the point was, Toby, the point I was making back then was simply that anybody from anywhere in the world could come to this country, get a test, and if they were, unfortunately for them, HIV positive, they would get the antiretroviral drugs, which cost the taxpayer 25,000 quid a year, and it led to, Toby, a flood of HIV-positive patients in the UK saying to me that actually their quality of care wasn't what it was because the system was overloaded. It was a point about health tourism at the public purse. And Toby, that's not relevant. That is not relevant to this situation because actually, by taking little Charlie Gard to America 7 or 8 months ago, it would have been less of a cost on the public purse because they would have paid for themselves to go and a bed would have been freed at Great Ormond Street, Toby. So I think they are, frankly...
When you start putting everyone's health down to just as a money situation and down to people being immigrants and people being from certain countries, it's all right for people from here to go abroad to get care and... But
they're paying, Toby, they're paying for it. The point about the National Health Service, Toby, is that we are giving out free NHS treatments to people from overseas that are costing us something like 2 billion sterling a year. And I'm not sure that's fair when you've got families who in some cases have been paying into this for years who can't get a GP appointment, who can't get one. Toby, it's a different debate. We'll have it one evening, and when we do, you come on and have a real good go. But it's not the point we're making right now. Marie in Castleford. Good evening, Marie.
Good evening. What a pleasure to speak with you. I'm very nervous, but...
Oh, don't be. Just think we're having a chat in a local pub, Marie.
I know. Well, I feel like that when I'm listening to you every day, but then it's different. Anyway, it's a real pleasure. Thank you for accepting my call.
Okay.
And unfortunately, although I agree with you on every subject, predominantly, I don't on this one.
Okay.
I had a premature baby born at 28 weeks. She's fine now. She's 15 and she's fabulous. However, due to circumstances, I ended up having her at a local hospital that had no advanced facilities to deal with a premature baby, and Leeds would have been my local hospital, which is only 8 miles away. However, she was too poor. She needed a heart operation, and she was too poorly to move. And I spent months and months of the first months of her life arguing with the doctors that I was right. I wanted to move in. I wanted the operation done. And I wasn't right. And eventually she had it done intravenously, so without a big scar, she had it done. But it was all about time. And reflection on that period of my life was completely different to the one as a parent than as a medical expert. And I think it's so clouded, and I really do believe, I know a lot of people have got opinions and they justify it by having a child, but having a child that's really, she weighed £1.15, so she didn't even weigh as much as a bag of sugar. And to have a child that's really desperately sick like that, you've got to have been there to sort of... And one of the biggest things that would have happened to Alicia would have been cerebral palsy, so she would have been severely disabled with a bleed on the brain. And I'm not sure that I would have wanted to make that decision at that point to allow that to happen and her to be severely disabled, you know. But at the time, I thought I was right, you know.
Marie,
yes.
you make the point. Look, the doctors are going to be right more than we are, all right? I get that. I completely understand that. But this is not about whether medically the Dr. Hirano was right or wrong. Marie, it's about choice, parental choice, and that's the point that I'm making, and I thank you very much for that call. Now, Alistair Seaton Marsden has been very, very close to the Guard family for all the months of this case. Alistair, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel.
So they're still fighting in the courts, still battling away, and this time it's for the right for Charlie to die at home.
That's right. That's what I haven't been in the court this afternoon, but that's what I understand. It's been going on for some time this afternoon.
Yeah, there seem to be sort of practical objections to it. I mean, there's obviously the whole thing has been absolutely devastating, Alistair, devastating for the parents who've been through so much, and the glare of publicity and endless court cases. I was making the point earlier that with various PR companies and departments and legal bills, I mean, it just seems to me, Alistair, that the National Health Service has spent a huge amount of money to prevent these parents taking Charlie abroad. I mean, am I right to think that?
Oh, I would think, I can only imagine we are talking, Nigel, of 7 figures.
7 figures? You think £1 million?
I spoke to the lawyers who've recently been representing the parents and asked them what sort of money that they think they had spent. They've been doing this all pro bono, all free of charge. I asked them, what if you'd done your normal billing rate? And I was amazed by the figure that they came up with. It was well in the very high 6 figures. And that is not the original lawyers that parents are using.
Wow.
So imagine what the state has been. Effectively, it's the state, it's the taxpayer, it's you, I, and all the listeners out there. Imagine what the other side have been paying, because just in this set of hearings, they've had 2 sets of lawyers, one for the guardian of Charlie and one for Gosh, and there's been all the previous cases. So I cannot possibly imagine.
That's amazing. And Alistair, finally...
Not to mention all the money they've spent on employing PR professionals.
Well, I have been alluding to this earlier on in the show, I have to say.
Okay.
And Alistair, finally, I mean, is there any prospect after all of this that we can actually get some change in the law to give parents greater rights in this situation?
I have no idea. I'm not a legislator. I'm not in Parliament. All I know is, Gosh, have been just ignoring. I'm speaking it from a personal perspective. What I'm seeing is that they're just Great Ormond Street was ignoring the wishes of the parents. If they had listened months ago, then they could have potentially got treatment for baby Charlie. No one knows for certain, obviously, what the outcome would have been, but all they were asking was for that opportunity.
I know.
And every step of the way,
parents
have been blocked.
And there was nothing to be gained by Great Ormond Street in doing this. And I had a caller on earlier, Alistair, who said that this erodes trust further in yet another great British institution. Alistair Seaton Marsden, thank you. I'm back tomorrow evening from 7. Coming up at 10, it's Ian Collins, but up next is Clive Bull.